if you're able to build distribution, it definitely behooves you to figure out how you could monetize it through ownership, not just through advertising.
Right. Bars, bro.
Freaking bars, King.
Jordan, what's happening, man? How you feeling today?
I'm good. You know, another day, another business. No, I'm kidding. I'll let you say that. But no, I'm very happy. I don't know if people live in this city, but as of today, March 10th, it is 58 degrees in New York City, and I've already reached my move goal. That's how warm it is. I'm getting out. I'm walking around. I'm doing chores again. You know when the last time I went to the post office was? Just because it was freezing outside. So I'm back, baby. We're back. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good, man. No, getting all settled into my new apartment and very excited. Another episode of Business of Talent podcast where we deconstruct how trends and shifts across media, talent, entertainment, the creator economy are redefining how businesses are built and scaled. In today's episode, we're particularly excited as we'll really be doing a deep dive into talent-led brands, right? Is this a lasting business model or a passing trend, right? There's no shortage of different brands that are being launched by celebrities left and right. So we just kind of wanted to use this episode to dive deep into some of the different leading brands, leading creators, as well as some of the ones that have flopped, right? Some of the different market shifts. So we can really try and get to the bottom as to whether or not this is something that's here to stay or if this is just a bubble that's here today and gone tomorrow.
Are we gonna call it flops when we discuss them? That sounds like shots fired there. this person's business, it fucking flopped.
No sugarcoating on the Business of Talent podcast.
yeah. They did not do well. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. You and I both obviously work very intimately in the creator economy, and we do have a stake in whether it gets bigger or not. We're not going to look at it from that perspective today. We're going to look at it from a completely objective perspective to figure out if this is something that's here to stay in the form that it's currently, the form that's currently in. But looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, 1000%. So I think the best place for us to start too is before we kind of dive into some of the different kind of case studies or stories, is really just to think around some of the market shifts that are taking place that are really turning this that are kind of making this possible, right? Like it's not something that is 100% new, right? There's been celebrity launched brands for a while, but it definitely seems like there's been a massive uptick in recent years. So, I mean, I think from your perspective, why do you think we're seeing such a big uptick over the past couple of years?
So I think it actually has to do with technology and the barrier to entry. So I don't necessarily I think the inputs have increased tremendously with the ability, and I'm going to sound like an old person when I say this, but with the ability to create content on people's phones. I think when you lower that barrier to entry, you get a lot of trash, but there's also a lot of diamonds in the rough that you wouldn't have been able to get without those technological advancements. So we've talked about AI. That's the most recent technological advancement that would allow even more people to be content creators, including us, who utilize AI in our workflows. But before that, creating content, we all remember Vine. That was sort of like the beginning of short form content in my head, and that was all cell phone driven. So I think from a macro level, it's technology that is affording these types of advancements that are allowing people to create more content. Now, from a more micro level, why so much money is going into it, I think people are starting to get their groove. Like the connection with people, content creators now, I think is more organic than it ever has been. And with that organic connection comes opportunities. Before it was brands reaching out to creators, endorsements obviously have been a big thing for many decades. Now it's just creators creating their own brands. But for a while, people didn't take content creation and social media management that seriously. Like it wasn't necessarily a thing people thought they could make a living off of, and now people are doing it from their bedrooms. So the technological advancements, I think, are allowing there to be more inputs into content creation, which is allowing more people to create content that actually resonates with people. And then the quality of that content, I think, is higher too. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, no, I think just building upon that, I think that there's been it's become easier today than ever before. I wouldn't say it's easy, but relatively speaking, easier for people to build audiences directly across different social
It's
platforms.
easy to create content. It's not necessarily easy to build an audience.
Yeah. Although I will say now it is more up to an individual to as to how they take advantage or don't take advantage of the opportunity to build audiences online if
Mhm.
versus much like held by different gatekeepers. You needed to get on TV, you needed to get billboard ads. Now you can kind of build your own direct distribution. So I think as a result, early on, I mean, we saw a lot of different creators relying on ad revenue and paid endorsements. But now, as people are able to build their own audiences better and have direct access to those communities, they're starting to kind of realize that it can be more fruitful for them to create products that are authentically aligned with their brand. I think you couple this with the fact that, like, even from a consumer behavior perspective, we're seeing that, like, even in one survey, 69%, that's a good stat right there. 69% of consumers friends and family over information versus that coming directly from brands. So I think we're seeing a lot of different niche talent build their own audiences, and the general consumer landscape starting to develop more trust with those different individuals and with those different creators. So I think it's rather than those creators and influencers just being the conduit of sales to other brands, they're now starting to kind of um, build more enterprise value by way of creating brands directly for their audiences. And I think uh, that's kind of creating a lot of opportunity. I think as we'll kind of dive into this too, it's like
Before
the
you continue, I just want to point out that you said they trust influencers, friends, and family. Influencers are next to friends and family in this survey in almost the same comparison. The fact that this survey has credibility, even though influencers are aligned with friends and family, just goes to show how powerful influencers are now. Like
yeah.
influencers, friends, and family are all in the same category now of influencer in terms of the products you buy. Obviously, not necessarily the relationship you have with them, but in terms of the products you buy, they can be side by side by side. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a lot of these, it's interesting. Even like podcasts as a medium, people like different big podcasters will meet fans, and these fans feel as if they have a personal connection because they're just constantly listening to these people passively. It feels like they're right there with them. So I think as
We
people,
are right there with y'all. We're right there with
yeah,
y'all. We're right
exactly.
there with our community.
No, I mean, I think it's creating just a deeper level of like organic, authentic connection between creators and audiences that previously was not necessarily possible simply by the kind of means of of content distribution. So, I think that's a lot of the foundation that's kind of caused a lot of this upswing. I think we're only seeing more and more funding continue to flow into the space to different creators to try and build and scale products. Um, I think when we look at the different case study side, I mean, a lot of the narrative is really dominated by these like macro creators, right? Prime with Logan Paul and KSI, Skims and Kim Kardashian. I think that's great, and I think there's some like stories as to why those have actually kind of risen through the ashes because I think there's just as many flops from different celebrities trying to launch brands. Um, but I'm also particularly excited too, just by kind of seeing more and more of these like mid-market case studies emerge as well, where it's you don't necessarily need to be this mass market product, but instead of Starbucks being the one uber dominant coffee brand, what are the 50 different craft coffee brands that are now able to thrive within their own like subsegments? It's kind of similar to that of some of the evolution within the music industry and kind of what used to traditionally be very much dominated by major labels. You kind of continue to see an increase in market share by independent artists and independent labels. So I think it's is the net market size changing? Not necessarily, but you're just starting to see the aggregate of different independent brands collectively start to take away market share from what was otherwise controlled by a couple, like a very few set of very big brands. Um, so yeah, let's dive into some of these different like kind of case studies and why we felt they worked and any interesting points. Um, I think one of them, we'll even talk about Prime with Logan Paul and KSI. This, if you're not aware, is kind of like a hydration beverage launched by Logan Paul and KSI. In its first year, they were able to generate over $250 million in retail sales. By the end of 2023, Bloomberg reported that Prime was on track to surpass 1.2 billion in cumulative sales by the end of 2023. I do think it's really interesting, though, that after this initial craze, sales of Prime in the UK dropped 48% in 2024. Um, according to Nielsen data. I mean, that's fascinating. And I think that it kind of brings to light an interesting point, which is that there can still be, there can be this kind of like initial hype or this initial craze, but unless there's like genuine product market fit long term, um, then it's the business fundamentals still apply. So I think they did a great job really proving that you could capture a lot of market share extremely fast. Um, with that said, I think still comes the fact that the novelty or kind of quick hit marketing schemes aren't going to last long term, and that consumers still uh, might buy it to try it out for the novelty. But if they're actually going to build long term brand loyalty, long term brand equity that goes beyond just their likeness and their personality, it's really, really critical that they continue to lean into business fundamentals beyond what can otherwise just be a quick, like, short term growth play. What stands out to you regarding that?
So it's interesting that you pointed to product market fit as a reason for why their sales dropped. In my head, there could be several different things. We're going to go into this a little bit more when we talk about other case studies as well. But marketing, this is, first of all, to zoom out a little bit, creators are just marketing vessels in the beginning for their products. They're not necessarily going to make or break a product. They're just this huge marketing vessel, which is very, very important, but it doesn't necessarily sustain a business. I agree with that. Now, sales of Prime in the UK dropping, we would need a little bit more information about why that would happen. It could be because Logan Paul decided to stop promoting it as much. It could be because they don't have as many not endorsements, but partnerships with UFC or whoever they decide to partner with. It could be because they're producing less because they expected this to happen. I'm not actually sure, but 48% going down is obviously not a great number. I'm just wondering what exactly was part of the reason why it's going down, other than the fact that there might not have been the best product market fit. You know what I mean? There could be some other
Yeah.
things that are sort of involved. That being said, like novelty is a market still. Like you don't necessarily have to mass produce things. Like maybe the future of creators creating businesses are creating only novelty items, you know. I think about Yeezy, for example, Yeezy shoes, how he only in the beginning used to make like very small limited number of Yeezys and they were very expensive before they were mass produced. Would we have been saying that about Yeezys if he decided to mass produce them early? Could it have also been a timing thing that was an issue with Logan Paul? I guess regarding your point, it still goes to show Logan Paul himself only with his only with his fan base cannot sustain a company. There's got to be a lot of strategy involved as well.
Yeah, which I think is one of the kind of like key factors to keep in mind when you're thinking about these sorts of brands long term, which is like they call in business like key man risk, or like who is the key person, key man, and is there like risk associated to them falling out? Um, if a talent led brand never decouples from the talent, then there's always key man risk, such that if anything bad happens with the talent, like an interesting example here too is like Travis Scott and Cacti. Um,
Mm-hmm.
strong launch with that actual product when it came to market. But after the like tragedy surrounding the Astroworld concert, the brand was like abruptly discontinued in 2022. Um, really, I mean, you brought up Yeezy, it has ups and downs. Obviously, a lot of crazy stuff happening there. I think when you look at other brands that really do break out, they get to a point where, yeah, maybe they use the initial momentum from the diehard like fan base of the talent to like springboard and launch the brand. But then they get to a point where people are actually buying the product that might not even necessarily know who the creator is behind it. And I think that's like critical component. Like I think if you look at a brand like Skims that has been like Kim Kardashian Skims, which has like sustained very strong growth, right? And let's see, by 2021, sales were at 275 million, 2022, 500 million, 23, 750 million. Um, I mean, similarly, ridiculous growth just when it comes to tracking the valuation of the company over time. Um, One thing that they've continued to do is lean into different brand partnerships and ongoing clever marketing that go a bit beyond just like Kim K's brand and Kim K doing social pushes, right? So they've had a kind of partnership with Nike and the NBA and Fendi. So I think they're continuing to get very clever and crafty when it comes to building partnerships. Yes, they might leverage some of her relationships, but it's not like she's necessarily at the forefront of those different partnerships, such that the brand can really overcome any of the downsides of potential like key man risk. Um,
Yeah, I wanted to also bring up an early case of this happening, and I don't think people know about this, but 50 Cent and vitamin water in the early 2000s. 50 Cent had an opportunity in 2003 to collaborate with Vitamin Water, and instead of taking payment, decided to take equity in the company. He increased the revenue for Vitamin Water from I think 100 million in 2004 to 700 million by 2007. And then when it was bought by Coca-Cola, which they bought the company that owns Vitamin Water for 4.1 billion, he made 100 million dollars. That was like the first time I heard of an artist, creator, someone in the creator economy like take equity over payment, and then it ended up working out really well. But I bring him up because I still drink Vitamin Water even though it's not associated with 50 Cent anymore. Like there was a point where Formula 50 stopped representing all of Vitamin Water. And I feel like it has to transcend the creator in order to actually become a successful business. Another example
yeah,
of this happening right now, a failure, for example, is Elon Musk and Tesla. Elon Musk obviously is an owner of Tesla, as well as several other companies, but it's the one that's most associated with him as a person. He's obviously a co founder of PayPal. He's obviously a co founder of several different companies, Starlink, but the one that's associated with him the most is Tesla. Because of the controversy around Elon Musk right now, Tesla's stock shares have tanked. And that's unfortunate because obviously there's more people that work at Tesla than just Elon Musk. But it's so closely tied to who he is as a person, the decisions that he makes, that the shares sort of revolve around his brand of being a genius. And when he's not a genius, which is what people think right now because of how he's working in the government, then the stock price and the valuation of his business has gone down. Forget what the cars are like. Forget if you like the cars. Forget if you want a Cybertruck. It's so closely tied to him as a person that it's almost made it more volatile. And I also think of that when you kind of brought up earlier Travis Scott. It's happened before.
1,000%. No, I totally agree. And I mean, I think it just kind of goes back to the key man risk as well as just one of the risks associated with businesses of this nature. Um, I think on the yeah, just to kind of build upon that too. I mean, when it comes to like the negative case against these sorts of businesses and like bring a healthy dose of like skepticism, right? We are seeing them pop up left and right, but I think there's a interesting big mass market like beauty brand incubator called Mesa, Maesa. Scott Oshry, the CMO of this beauty incubator, had a really interesting quote around the fact that he's like, celebrities think that with no experience they can become a billionaire by doing beauty. It's almost like, are you kidding me? Uh, it's like it's very attractive. It's also really important that different like talent thinks through this stuff very holistically around what their approach is. Is it very aligned deeply and authentically with what they've already kind of built their authority and influence around? I think you've also like seen other flops there where it's like, okay, you might have built a great audience as a musician around your music, but if you haven't actually really built active participation and engagement around other facets, other passions, other elements of your brand that may be helpful to launching some sort of brand, then that's just gonna you're not gonna necessarily be in as kind of well primed of a position to really be able to do so. Um, what do you feel like are some of the yeah, what do you feel like are some of like the factors for success or kind of like keys to really keep in mind when it comes to launching these successfully if you're talent or somebody that's working with talent trying to take one of these to the moon?
Well, firstly, you need to know your role. Not everybody who is a great marketer is a great CEO. And a lot of these businesses, the ones that end up really successful, end up bringing in experts that came up in the industry by their bootstraps and less so because they were content creators. Not saying that if you're a content creator, you're not coming up by your bootstraps, but you're kind of jumping to another business without actually having experience in that field. So you either have to know that business like the back of your hand, or you have to hire someone that does. Realize that at first you are only a vessel to get the word out. You're not necessarily a vessel for success of the business. Secondly, people will always need product market fit. Um, we've read about so many tequilas being launched by people. I can't, and they all say it's different than the other tequilas. I don't know, Sam. I don't know. I get equally as drunk. I make the same exact face. Like you can't say all the tequila is different that The Rock is making versus George Clooney. So there has to be a product market fit. I think the beginning of Casamigos, to bring up Casamigos, is that George Clooney, his brand is that of somebody who's very, very smooth. So his tequila has to follow suit. It can't just be a tequila that people don't like. Casamigos is my favorite tequila. It does not matter to me that George Clooney owned it and sold it. I like the tequila. There has to be that's involved as well. There has to be people that are looking for that type of tequila and are interested in it. Like I said, does not matter to me that George Clooney was involved in it. But I'm sure I heard about it because George Clooney was involved in it because of that beginning of the marketing that he did as one of the founders, you know? And then finally, I'll say my biggest thing, and then I guess you can say your top three. I think, and this kind of goes off the first one, like you need help. You need a lot of help to start a successful business, and realizing your role and where you need help, I think will pay extreme dividends in the long run. Like I try to think about myself. If I started a business, what would it be? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. If we're going out of the creator economy, I feel like I maybe want to start a decluttering business. But let's say I had 2 million followers on TikTok and Instagram, and when I came to your crib, I just fucked it up. I wasn't helping anything. I was moving stuff around. I was just organizing it. Then the marketing would only go so far. So hire an expert, make sure there's product market fit and quality, and get help. Those are my top three. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some might be a tad redundant, but yeah, I think the great operator side is critical. I think in the same way that you have musicians and music managers, it's like the talent's going to be best fit to do what they do best, which is often going to be creating content, growing and engaging community, doing
Right.
kind of creative marketing. But there's definitely a lot of nuance and a lot of skill required in scaling a successful operation. So I think having that sort of pairing is absolutely critical. I think finding ways to thoughtfully leverage the demand and distribution that talent has to like come to market in a very strong and aggressive way is key. But I think in tandem, you really need to be thinking around how you're kind of like decoupling the brand from the talent.
Mm, mm,
So far, if it's like X person's brand versus X person is like a partner and help launch this brand, but now it takes on a much bigger world in life than just the fact that it's that celebrity's brand. Um, and then yeah, I think lastly, yeah, whether product market fit or like genuine product innovation, like you still are competing with similar products in a similar category. And although it's nice to have that kind of like X very influential personality associated, it only goes so far when it comes to building loyalty and retention amongst the products that are being launched. So I do think the top of mind needs to be some level of like genuine product innovation to drive retention beyond that initial hype.
do you
But
think this is an end goal for people who are content creators and want to become large content creators, or do you think this is a side quest? Like, do you think building real IP at the end of this experience, whatever that is for each content creator, should be what brand are you going to start and how you're going to start it, how you're going to launch it, how you're going to run it? Or do you think that, like I was saying previously, that's just something you can do on the side while you have this other brand business that you're focusing on?
I think for a lot of creators that are playing this in the long game, they don't want to be on the hamster wheel forever, having to
Mhm.
and do advertising or brand endorsements. So being able to that only scales so far too. I mean, it's to each their own, but it definitely does seem like this is continuing to kind of be that like final frontier of generating sustainable wealth through meaningful ownership beyond just selling access to your audience through advertising. So I think we're only going to see it continue to happen more and more. And I think it's hard to do this from the jump. Like you kind of haven't, it does make sense to some extent if you're sequencing and do want to be a creator to kind of focus on like building the distribution first, and getting ad revenue is kind of the easiest like way to go 0 to 1. But I think when it comes to going to that like 1 to 10 phase, this is the path. And I think a lot of creators are realizing and leaning into it accordingly.
We have brands. Do you think you and I eventually should figure out how to expand these brands into something with real IP?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is like, if anything, we're at an interesting turning point, especially once we start seeing a lot of the innovation surrounding like audience development, content creation with AI take shape. But if anything, what's gonna like products will be less of the moat and distribution will be the moat. Uh, and how, like
Bars.
tech products, like it's the speed you can bring a product to market and the lack of costs, like how cheap it is to be able to like build out prototypes and bring products to market today versus 5 years ago. It's becoming easier and easier to replicate various products, drop shipping, whatever it may be.
Right.
So and getting like, if you're able to build distribution, it definitely behooves you to figure out how you can monetize it through ownership, not just through advertising.
Right.
Bars, bro.
Yeah,
Freaking
man.
bars, King.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments. Is this a bubble or is this here to stay? Talent-led brands. I'm definitely think it's here to stay. And I think we'll see it kind of evolve and level out a bit, but I think we'll only see more and more brands.
Before we leave, let me ask you this real quick. What talent-led brands do you currently own or like buying? I'll say mine. My main one is probably Casamigos. I shop at the Gap. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not flexing and shopping at places to. I'm not getting Yeezys for more than one reason. But there's that. I would say Casamigos. Um, I'm not actually sure if there are any other ones other than that. How about you?
Yeah, there's actually not too many that are coming to mind. I'm like looking around my apartment. Seeing
Yeah,
right
me
now.
too. I'm like, yo,
I mean, there's some clothing that I have that kind of leans a bit in the talent side, but yeah, no, I mean, interesting to think about. Not necessarily going too crazy across any different products quite yet. So hopeful that I'll see that change in the coming months and years.
yeah, I got Nikes and Adidas over there. I'm wondering if in 5 years or so there'll be talent launched shoes from a TikTok influencer or something. we'll see.
Let's see. Awesome. Well, as always, appreciate you all tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Excited to be back next week. But until then, we are out.